everybody, this is Diana from So Very Crafty, and today we are here to create a super simple beginner sewist project, which is a simple pillowcase. This is an easy project to complete for any beginner sewist, and it's a fun project because you get to make pillowcases galore. You can give them as gifts. I know in our household we go through a lot of pillowcases, and there's no reason to not make them fun. So you can see in my example, I've used a nice daisy fabric with a check fabric as an accent cuff and a nice yellow for the accent stripe. Because in my pillowcase example, we are going to use 3 different fabrics. You can use all the same fabrics if you like. It's totally up to you. So let's get started. What do we need in order to complete this pillowcase? Well, we need some fabric and we need a sewing machine, and that's it. So for our fabrics, we need about 3/4 of a yard of main fabrics for your pillowcase. In my case, I chose this nice daisy on black print that I really liked. And as an accent cuff for the cuff part of my pillowcase, I chose a nice black and white check. And to accent that, I chose a nice yellow piece that I'm going to use as the just a little accent flare to set off the black and to bring out the yellow in my daisies. So what size do we cut these? Well, super easy once again. We are going to cut these the width of our fabric, which is generally for quilting type cottons, which is what I'm using here today, about 44 inches wide. We are going to cut our main fabric 27 inches long and our cuff fabric 9 inches long. And our little accent stripe is going to be 2 inches long. And again, all of those are by the width of the fabric. So all you have to worry about is the length. Now, once you cut out your fabrics, you're going to have 3 different lengths of fabric by the width of your fabric. But keep in mind that your width of fabric also includes the selvages. We are going to cut those selvages off. And quite frankly, the selvages are different in every fabric. I usually cut 1 inch, almost sometimes 2 inches off the sides of my fabric to get the selvages off. And the selvages are just that part of the fabric that is connected to the loom as it's being woven in the factory. So whatever you do, whenever you cut off your selvages, which are the sides of your fabric, just make sure that all of your fabrics end up being the same width. So in my case, they ended up being about 42 inches wide. So I have 42 by 27, 42 by 9, and 42 by 2. The next thing that I did, which I'm not going to show you here, is I took my 2-inch width of fabric and I folded it in half and I pressed it so that it's now a 1-inch folded piece of fabric. Now, in order to make our pillowcase, we are going to start out by simply laying out our cuff fabric, and in my case it is the black and white check, face up on our work surface. Then we are going to take our main fabric, which in my case is the daisy fabric, and we are going to place it face up on our cuff fabric, and making sure that all of our raw edges are even. That's really important for this project. So make sure that the raw edges are even at the top and even at the sides. Then you're going to take your stripe fabric, the folded fabric, and make sure that you have the raw edge, and you are going to lay it on top of your outer fabric with the raw edges again, making sure that those raw edges are all lined up. And we are going to pin this just to make sure that it's all lined up and it stays lined up for our next step. You don't necessarily have to pin this if you don't want to, but I find that it keeps things nice and even for our next step. And what is our next step? Well, we are going to take our main fabric and we are going to roll it just like a burrito and just keep rolling it until we reach the cuff. Once we reach the cuff, we are going to fold the cuff over the rolled fabric so that the bottom raw edge meets the raw edges of the fabrics that we've already pinned together. And we're going to remove those pins, and we're going to pin the cuff fabric to those previously pinned fabrics so that they're all together, and make sure again that these raw edges are lined up perfectly. And keep in mind that when you're pinning this, do not catch that rolled up fabric. You want that rolled up fabric to be free and easy inside the burrito shape. It just needs to be floating in there because that is the main part of your pillowcase, and you don't want to have it sewn to the seam of your cuff fabrics. So I'm just removing these pins and repinning the top portion of this so that all of these raw edges are perfectly aligned for when we sew our seam. Now our top raw edges are totally aligned, and we are going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we are going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down this top raw edge seam. So let's do that. Okay, now we're back and we have sewn our nice straight seam without catching the rolled up fabric. And now we are simply going to reach inside and pull out our main fabric through the hole at the end so that we can get our pillowcase out and continue to our next step. So this is a pretty simple process. The hole is large enough. It doesn't take too much to pull it out. And you can see how that just magically produces a nice cuff to our pillowcase with a nice little accent stripe. Perfect. Now we have a choice. If you're a beginner sewist, you may just want to fold these together, right sides together, like this, and sew down the raw edge side and the bottom, and turn it right sides out, and you can be finished. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to sew a French seam. And a French seam is nothing to be afraid of. Even for a beginner sewist, It is a very simple process. Instead of placing our pillowcase right sides together, we are going to place our pillowcase wrong sides together. I know that that seems counterintuitive, but I promise you that it's not. It is all going to work out beautifully when we're finished. So we're going to place this wrong sides together, and we are going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along the side and along the bottom. So let's do that. Again, make sure that these raw edges are aligned. Now, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, wow, that does not look good. Well, the way we're going to solve this problem is we are going to trim this 1/4 inch seam to about 1/8. So we're going to take out our scissors and we are going to trim this seam down to about 1/8 inch all the way along the edge. And same on the bottom. Rid of our scraps. Now what we're going to do is we are going to turn our pillowcase right side together. And we are going to re-sew these seams so that there is a finished edge on both the front and on the back. So let's do that now. So there we go. We have a nice finished seam all the way around our pillowcase on the outside. And when we turn it on the inside, and when we turn it on the outside, we are going to have a nice finished seam on the inside, or on the outside. No more ugliness, and just perfect pillowcase. Very easy to make, not too long. And I should say, before I sewed that second 1/4 inch seam for the French seam, I did press this pillowcase, the seams on the pillowcase, so that it would make a nice crisp seam on the edge. And there you have it, a beautiful handmade pillowcase, just the fabrics that I wanted. So there you go. You can make this in, I think, 10 minutes with no problems at all. Just a little bit of fabric and a sewing machine, and you too can make this super simple pillowcase project. Thanks for joining me, and look forward to my next video on how to make another simple sewing project for beginner sewists. Thank you.